So I'm back here with journalist Roman. He's a graduate from the USC with his bachelor's degree in journalism. I'm also a journalist. I was verified on Twitter before they were selling them. I'm a legacy verified as a journalist, and we are discussing the JonBenet Ramsey case in this series, and we're going to be going through an interview that John and Patsy granted to local media, and we're going to be reacting to it. For those of you who don't know, JonBenet was a little 6-year-old beauty queen. She was very, very famous locally, and she disappeared from inside her own home on Christmas Day. The next morning when Patsy got up, she reportedly found the ransom note on the stairs, and she called law enforcement in a sort of bizarre 911 call that we analyzed in video 1, and talked about a ransom note, which we analyzed in video 2. This is video 3, where we're going to look at this interview that John and Patsy did with the media. So, hi, Roman. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me again, Jessica.
All right, let's go. Let's do this.
To those of you who may want to ask, let me address very directly. I did not kill my daughter, JonBenet. There have also been innuendos that she has been or was sexually. Those were the most hurtful innuendos to us as a family. They are totally false.
So I'm just going to hop in here and say that that actually is not false. But there was an essay component to it, according to the coroner, which I can't go into detail on here on YouTube, but I will be posting a video on it over on Patreon at Reporter Room on Patreon if you want to check it out there. You can read all of the horrific details. I don't have any photographs or anything like that. I refuse to share anything like that, but I will go through the report. So that right off the bat is already not true. What do you think about that, Roman?
Yeah, I agree. It's, I mean, the evidence shows that it happened, regardless of what he wants to say. Um, it's just the facts of the case. There's really no arguing against it.
JonBenet and I had a very close relationship. I will miss her dearly for the rest of my life.
I'm Patsy Ramsey, JonBenet's mother, and I'm grateful that we are finally able to meet together face to face. I'm appalled that anyone would think that John or I would be involved in such a hideous, heinous crime. But let me assure you that I did not kill JonBenet. I did not have anything to do with it. I love that child.
I'm going to stop right there. For those of you that don't know, I'm a massive Peter Hyatt fan. He does statement analysis, and he would have jumped all over that. I loved that child, not this child, not my child, that child. That is distancing language. What do you think, Roman?
Yeah, it's just a classic case of distancing yourself from the victim, whether it's through some semblance of guilt or whether it's just through an emotional detachment. Typically, it's done, in a very in a way to put yourself and the victim, as far away from each other as possible.
I did not have anything to do with it. I love that child.
I loved that child, not my child, not JonBenet, not this child, but that child. I just think that's interesting. Again, this just having this little red flag in and of itself doesn't mean a lot, but when you add it to what Roman and I have already done, which is we've gone through the 911 call, which was really a bizarre 911 call. And you go through the ransom note, and that ransom note, which was 3 pages long, and took whoever wrote it anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, depending on which law enforcement agency is you're listening to or which statement analyst you're listening to. It's a long time for a kidnapper to be in a house. And we know that the ransom note was written in the house because the notepad and the pen, the notepad was Patsy's notepad that it was written on, and the pen came from inside the house also. So it's just kind of odd. So now we have the parents, John coming right out of the gate saying what's not true, according to the coroner. There was an essay component to it. And then Patsy, and also JonBenet, a lot of people have said cover
Rope
up.
and paintbrush.
No, that it was done after JonBenet was already no longer with us. I'm watching my words. No, that is not true. It was done while she was with us, and they had fingernail marks of her on her own neck that the coroner found that prove that she was awake when that happened to her. So that's why I don't think it was a 9-year-old Burke Ramsey that did it. To me, it just doesn't seem like something a 9-year-old would do. That's why I do think it was an adult, which means it was an intruder who either created this ransom note with the bizarre $118,000 ransom ask to frame John and Patsy Ramsey, or it was John or Patsy, and they convinced the other one to cooperate with them because that person believed that the other parent believed that maybe it was Burke, and they did it to protect Burke. Those are just theories, just opinions, but that's what I think. What do you think, Roman?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with everything you said in that regard. I don't have much to add. I've basically covered, my thoughts on that, and I pretty much mirror what you said in their entirety.
With my whole of my heart and soul.
Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, what do you want to say to the killer of your daughter?
We'll find you. We will find you. I have that as a sole mission for the rest of my life.
Mrs.
Okay, so he says he has that for a sole mission for the rest of his life. And that seems like a good answer to me. I don't have any problem with that answer. If they hadn't found JonBenet, then I would think that would be weird. Like when the McCanns say something like that, we're going to be looking for her for the rest of our lives. I think it's weird, especially early on when Madeline McCann could have been found at any time. When Summer Wells's parents made comments, similar to that, I found it to be weird. But in this case, I don't think it's weird because they know that their daughter is no longer with us. Well, let's continue on together, shall we?
Mrs. Ramsey?
Likewise, the police and investigators have assured us that this is a case which can be solved. You may be eluding the authorities for a time, but God knows who you are, and we will find you.
Issues that was distressing to us, and it perhaps caused some bias of opinion, is why did we bring lawyers into this process early on? And I can tell you both how that happened and why it happened. The how is that on the day after the tragedy, we were being consoled by friends and family, and a close friend of mine who was also a practicing attorney took me aside and said, "John, I see some things developing here that I would like to ask your permission to do some things that I think are necessary to be done." And I said, "Fine, do it."
And I don't know about you, Roman, but I don't have any problem at all with the fact that they got lawyers. I think that if you were in this kind of situation and you were, highly educated, and these parents both were, and you had, family friends that probably were attorneys, or maybe you had an attorney on retainer. He was a CEO of a big company. He probably had a lawyer on retainer. I would think that you would consult with that person and that person would tell you to get a lawyer. What do you think? I don't think that's a big red flag like a lot of people thought it
Yeah,
was.
I think getting a lawyer was probably the only smart thing that they did in the entirety of the situation. Yeah, if you're under investigation or even under suspicion of a serious crime, there's no reason why you shouldn't get a lawyer, and there's every reason why you should, because a lawyer can convey things to the prosecutor that you would not be able to do without incriminating yourself. It's just a terrible idea to go without an attorney. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
All right,
So
let's
he
continue.
retained counsel for Patsy and I. And we later learned, and really later was really the next few days, that the reason he did this is that sadly for our country, most tragedies of this nature apparently in the majority of cases are family related. And I think that's a tragic statement for our country. But because we were the parents of JonBenet, we were automatically put in the suspect pool. And so to not have knowledgeable counsel, my close friend felt would be foolish.
And he's not wrong. He's right. It would have been foolish for them not to get counsel. They knew their daughter. It wasn't like their daughter was missing. I think it's not like their daughter was missing and they needed to do everything to cooperate. John found her in the wine cellar of their house. So they knew where she was. They knew where she was. What do you think, Roman?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't. There's no good reason why you wouldn't get a lawyer in a situation like this, even if you are the parent. It's just, it would just be foolish to try and represent yourself or to communicate with the detectives, the interrogators, the prosecutor, etc., without any sort of attorney present, any sort of counsel.
All right, well, let's continue on. And I do find both Patsy and John to be very likable. It is very hard to believe that they could do something like this to their own child. But we've learned through cases from priests in the Catholic Church that that monsters look like just like everybody else. So I'm not saying they are or they aren't. I'm just saying I find them to be likable in this particular situation. I think they handled the 911 call wrong. They should have told law enforcement not to come in a marked vehicle. They should have asked them to come in an unmarked vehicle, maybe park some ways away. I think they should have kept their child Burke with them, not left him alone in his room. I think if you really thought you were being watched, I think they should have gotten the ransom together. And I don't think they should have had family and friends over.
Now, we also at that time, as a parent, I looked at retaining of attorneys. We also brought in a couple of investigative firms, some experts that we assembled. I felt a very helpless feeling as to what can I do to help solve this case. Had it been in my power, I would have called out the National Guard, frankly. So as we looked at this group of people that we pulled together, it was not only to advise us in this process, but hopefully to assist the investigation to a closure. We have spoken with the police. We spoke with the police approximately 8 hours on the 26th, another 2 hours on the 27th. That's
another thing that I think that's been thrown around about John and Patsy Ramsey was that they didn't cooperate with the police. They didn't sit down to do an interview with them. That's really not true. They did call the police. The police were at the house. I think the police do bear some responsibility in that they did botch the crime scene. They couldn't tell John and Patsy at that point because they didn't know what happened to JonBenet, so no provable crime had been committed other than their daughter had disappeared. But it seems like if I would have been a police officer, I think I would have told them, I do not think you should have family and friends over. I just, or have your friends over and your pastor over. I think that was weird on Patsy's part, especially after what was in that ransom note, which is if you know, we have 2 people watching you. They told them that in the ransom note. And if you don't follow our instructions, then she dies. So I think that was, an odd choice. But what do you think about John's demeanor on this?
I think in terms of his demeanor, I think he's very collected and calm about it. I know it's been some time, but he doesn't really strike me as someone who has a great amount of remorse for what happened or a great amount of sadness that he's carrying. He seems, I don't know, it seems of how he lost his wallet.
Oh, wow. So you think he's very matter of fact. All right. Well, what do you think about Patsy, Roman?
In terms of her demeanor, I think she's a little bit more believable in that regard. Her determination, as you put it, I think felt a little forced to me, but I would be willing to suspend disbelief if I didn't have all the knowledge that I have about what happened to think that perhaps she is being truthful.
Yeah, I think the craziest thing about this case is that similar to the Summer Wells case, which I've done a lot of videos on Summer Wells, if you want to go back and check out that playlist, and similar to the Madeleine McCann case, it just feels like something was really off in the way that things were handled on this. Multiple things were off, from not getting the ransom together to leaving their son alone. That's the other thing that we saw in the Summer Wells case. When Summer went missing, she sent the boys out, Candace did, the mother, to search for Summer. And if you really thought your daughter had been kidnapped, would you send the other kids off on their own? I don't think so. And we saw the same thing in the Madeleine McCann case, where we had the 2 twins who were younger than Madeleine. Madeleine was 4 and the twins were 3. And they left the twins alone to search for Madeleine. And I just think if you really thought there was an intruder, you wouldn't leave your child alone. And John and Patsy did the same thing when they left Burke alone up in his room, or sent him there, depending on who you believe. If he was either sent upstairs or he just stayed in bed up there alone when an intruder had just been in their house to kidnap their daughter. It's just odd. Well, let's continue on together, shall we?
Supplied them with every piece of information we have. So the impression that we haven't spoken with the police is totally false. What we have, what has been delayed has been this formal interrogation of us as suspects. And frankly, we were, as you might imagine, insulted that we would even be considered suspects in the death of our daughter, and felt that an interrogation of us was a waste of our time and a waste of the police's time. But because they have to do this, we're willing to do it, but not under any circumstance that was presented to us.
So the circumstances that they finally did agree, and I think there was a lot of brouhaha about the fact that these 2 went and did an interview with press, with the mainstream media, before giving the police an opportunity to formally interrogate them. Now, the police had interviewed them; they'd done that, but they, before they would sit down with the police to be interrogated, they wanted transcripts of everything that they had said to the police prior to review. And I'm sure their attorney told them to do that. But it does seem like you would want to, let yourself be ruled out. And I don't see where it would be a big hindrance to go in and talk to the police. If, he said he hired an attorney, to have your attorney sitting right next to you while you talk to the police. What do you think, Roman?
Yeah, I think getting an attorney is always a good idea, especially when you're being interrogated. But at the same time, the fact that they looked at it as an inconvenience to them or a hindrance to them, I
Yeah.
think is a little suspicious, because even if they were potentially the target of the suspicion, their information that they could have conveyed through their attorney could have still helped the investigation a great deal. So,
Great point.
We would like to think that we don't know anyone that we have ever met in our lives who could do such a thing to a child, but they talked with us and said, please tell us names of people, who may have been in your home at any time. We just outpoured information just as much as we could try to remember. But, no one specifically came to mind. I mean, you can't imagine such a horrible thing ever happening, much less somebody that you may know.
Something about Patsy's demeanor just makes me believe her. She just genuinely does look distressed. And I just wonder, I don't know. What do you think, Roman? I think she genuinely does look distressed. I get the feeling like she really did rack her brain. And the one that's, I just wonder if she wasn't coerced into writing that ransom note and that bizarre 911 call. If you were John and you see how calm John is, why would you let her make the 911 call unless she insisted it had to be her? And we don't know because, but I don't know. What do you think about her demeanor compared to his?
but like I said, I think that she's a bit more believable. Um, I think there's a possibility that she could be play acting a little. Hard to tell for sure.
Please subscribe if you would like to see more videos on the JonBenet Ramsey case.